All right, so here's the box. Nothing special, kind of pretty. Open this up. The required stickers and basic instructions, but everything just points to some websites. And this is the box itself. So this is the DSC Sport Controller. It is going to replace the factory Porsche PASM controller, and it's supposed to provide the benefit of both more comfort, more compliant road over bumps, harsh roads, which we've got a lot of in Seattle, as well as better performance for track driving. So what we're going to do, I'm going to run some tests in normal and sport mode, then install this module, rerun those tests around some Seattle streets, and see how well this thing does, see if I can feel a difference. All right, for this first test, I'm going to be driving around on some streets I know pretty well, and I'm just in regular, not sport mode, just in normal mode. The suspension's in normal mode. This is what I usually drive with most days. Anything else is just too stiff. So I'm hoping that this DSC Sport Controller will actually soften up the lower speed everyday driving on these terrible Seattle roads, and that I'll still get some really good performance out of the controller at high speed. This is the first time I'm trying this new setup. I've got my iPhone simultaneously filming the front out the windshield and then me at the same time, and hopefully this all works. I'm hoping what I get out of this new controller is, 2020 modern software running these shocks and springs. Shock and spring technology really hasn't changed all that much over the last decade. You still have the basic principles at play. What's changed around them is the controllers and the software that make them do all the sophisticated stuff. So I'm hoping that simply by updating the software, I'll get some of those more modern benefits. I've got the V3 controller, which is supposed to also control the dynamic chassis mounts. So I'm not sure I'm skilled enough to pick up on the difference, but we'll check out what it feels like. Some people have complained about the front end of these 997.2s feeling a little bit loose, but I've never felt that. I run the tires a little bit lower than the factory recommended settings, and that seems to keep it feeling really planted, really solid, even at higher speeds. Nice tight turn coming up. Car feels great. Throws itself around just a little bit. Step behind a bus. This road's pretty brutal. A lot of railroad tracks. Just a lot of potholes. I've put the car in sport, and that also activates the sport suspension. So now we're going to go back over these train tracks to see how brutal it is. Oh. Oh, every bump, it's like a punch in the kidney. Yeah, whenever I'm driving, I just find the sport suspension is just unusable on the street, at least where I'm driving. Maybe you're lucky and you've got better roads, but these roads out here, this is just atrocious. Pulling into one of my favorite spots. This is a car club in Seattle that I belong to called The Shop. All right, so I'm not the most handy guy in the world. I don't take on big scary projects. I'm not doing engine rebuilds, but that was maybe 10 minutes. I took some pictures along the way. For me, the only hard part is, the contortionist required to get underneath the glove box area, pull that out. But it was a super easy swap, nothing to be afraid of, nothing to break along the way. And I just fired up the car and it started again. So I hope we are in good shape. We're gonna take off and do some testing. Now we're in regular mode with the DSC Sport controller installed. The road's still terrible. I'm still going over the railroad tracks, but it feels better. At low speed, in regular mode, this feels a lot more like my 991 Targa did. It took that harshness right out, at least to me. When I drove on this road before, I was afraid to go over 10 miles an hour. Here comes the real bad part. No, that's a lot better. Now I'm in sport mode with the sport suspension. One thing I noticed is that when I hit sport mode, the sport suspension didn't automatically turn on. I had to click that separately. I wonder if that's a new default setting in the controller. I'll have to look that up. I actually like that. I often want to run sport mode without the harsher suspension, so that would be a nice upgrade. Yeah, over these bumps in sport mode, I'm not getting beat up. So after a day of testing, what do I think? For me, I think the DSC Sport module is worth it. This car, even in normal mode on Seattle streets, was really rough. Felt like it was really bouncy. Felt every hole, every pothole, every bump we have on the road. And I just couldn't use sport mode because it was just unusable. Now, at low speed, it's compliant. At a higher speed, we'll have to see. I haven't had any track time. But at low speed, it's taken the pain out of sport mode, and normal feels just like my 991 Targa. So this is a huge win in my book.